Howdy, we're back. We are back with a packed show of Connect This. And we're going to try a new thing that I think we haven't started yet, which is that we're going to forcibly mute everyone when we start it, except for me. I think there's a little bit of crosstalk sometimes. And I realized that my beautiful, flawless intros were not always making it through. So, we'll be doing that next time. But I was going to roll right through because we got so much stuff to talk about. And I'll start by introducing Travis Carter with USI Fiber. Welcome back, Mr. Co-host.
Oh, hello, Mr. Mitchell. I'm looking forward to the show and our dinner afterwards. So I will meet you there at 6 o'clock sharp.
6 o'clock. All right. That sounds good. We've got Kim McKinley from UTOPIA Fiber, who's in yet another hotel room. We should start ticking these off.
We should be like, what states haven't we visited lately? I am in Idaho Falls, Idaho today. So thanks for having me, Chris.
Which is a terrible place. No one should go there and drive up the values before I can buy a home there, because it's it's not a place anyone would want to go. And I think Idaho is like the single greatest destination for people of any state right now. Like, so I'll do my part and just say that Idaho is terrible. Nobody should move there before I do. We also have Doug Dawson from CCG. Welcome back.
Thank you, Chris. And I just have a quick comment. I noticed on the pre sign for the show here, you have me in a black shirt. I really can't remember when I've ever worn one. I'll be curious where you found that picture.
Yeah, we'll find out in the after show and bring it up next time.
You two wear black shirts, right? So.
Yeah. I would guess that we probably snapped it while you just weren't paying attention at some point.
Obviously, yes.
And I'm Christopher Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance in Minneapolis, but I'm in St. Paul, the better half. But I'll be meeting Travis for Wings in Minneapolis. I just want to note that it's now a month past the bet. Travis and I did get together, and he deliberately chose a place that did not have wings, so I could not make good on the bet yet. So tonight, we're going to a place that has wings, and I will pay.
Well, hold on. Is it just paying for the wings or the entire event?
I figured we could discuss that.
Everything.
3 seafood towers, please.
Before we get to the topics and the peekaboo, I did want to say there's a lot of really great events coming up. I think we're hearing that there's really good attendance at them. I am super excited. We have Broadband Communities coming up in Houston. That is right around the corner, May 2nd through the 5th. I'll be there in the pre-program with, I think, someone named Kim McKinley. Kim, didn't you rope me into something?
I did. You are going to be moderating the different versions of open access, talking with Roger Timmerman, the CEO of UTOPIA Fiber, and Bob from Underline. I don't remember his last name right now. I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I didn't give you any warning that I was going to put you on the spot.
Yeah. But thank you. I think it's going to be an interesting conference, and I'm excited to be in Houston. I'm really excited for the humidity. I haven't felt that kind of humidity in a while.
Yeah, considering we got snow today, I'm kind of looking forward to that too. We've got another event, Mountain Connect, 3 weeks after that, May 23rd through the 25th in Keystone, Colorado. This is one of the most interesting events that we have all year long. It's a great program, always put together. I'm going to be talking on a panel with some state leaders, I believe Idaho, Louisiana, and I should remember the other one, but this event isn't coming up soon enough, so I'm not paying attention to my role yet. And then we're also going to be having, I'm going to be going as well to the Nashville event, June 12th through the 15th, Fiber Connect in Nashville, Tennessee. Kim's going to be there too. We might see Doug at Houston or maybe Nashville.
Well, I can drive to Nashville. You might see me there. That's only a couple hours away. So, yep.
All right, maybe we'll drag Travis down then to see. That's the Fiber Broadband Association. So all kinds of vendors and interesting stuff, I'm sure there.
I'm in. When is that?
June 12th through the 15th.
All right, Nashville, here we come.
Yes. So we are going to have a fun show talking about a bunch of different topics. We're going to try and keep a lot of them moving fast and hitting quick, so we have plenty of time to talk about Huntsville with Jeff Reiman, as well as advice for a suburban community that has really good cable coverage, which is to say, like, service from a major company that's doing an okay job in terms of speeds. Maybe it's okay in reliability, probably pretty pricey. Local leaders don't want to do anything. What do we recommend for a person in that position? But first, Travis made a great point to me today on the phone that I just wanted to share. We talked before, and in fact, Jim Troutman, when he was on, talked specifically about this, about how shared Wi-Fi is no solution for a multifamily environment. It is not good enough. It is not digital equity. There's a lot of problems with it. But Travis raised an issue that I had never thought of, and I thought it was a very good, compelling argument for why that is not a good solution for a multifamily environment.
I did.
And then I prompted you.
I'm joking. I'm joking. No. So I got pitched this concept today and I couldn't even believe that I was getting this, that they want to put Wi-Fi access points in the hallway and consider that broadband. And so I just brought up some just basic usability things. Like, so imagine you have your laptop is hooked up to the access point in the hallway, and you're going to, of course, have user isolation, so one user can't see the other user. And so then we go and buy a printer and you hook it up to the same access point in the hallway and you can't use your printer. It seemed like anti-broadband to me. So I have adopted Kim's model of an open access Ethernet network inside a building, wire up every unit, and give everyone their own router. And it's totally original. Thank you, Kim, for the idea, and hopefully we can get some traction with this idea. But if you have a multi-dwelling unit, please don't put Wi-Fi access points in there and call it broadband.
Or at the very least, that shouldn't be the sole option. That might be, you might do that in addition to having in-home access.
But yeah, just.
I mean, I do like Wi-Fi in common spaces. It's great to be able to go down to other rooms and take your computer and phone. But to do it as the only choice is really bad. So, yep.
Can you imagine laying in bed with your iPad trying to read a book or something, and the Wi-Fi access point is down the hall and it's not working? And
I can. That's called a hotel.
Yeah. There you go. So I implore people, please do not do that. And just run proper cabling in the building, and we won't talk about it again for 30 years. Right.
And we did the podcast from Community Broadband Bits this week was terrific. I forget who the host was, but he really nailed it. And the guests were from Y-Zone in Yonkers in New York, which is the third largest city in New York, it turns out, where they've done some really interesting work with CBRS. And we talked honestly about the benefits, what they're seeing, how they're engaging in digital equity, and the costs. And it costs in excess of $1,200 per family, for something that's going to run for like 4 or 5 years, to get them on this service in a multifamily environment. And I feel like that's understandable, particularly in a place like Yonkers that has a very old stock of these apartment buildings. But they were pretty candid that they did not see that as a long-term solution. That's kind of they're buying time while they find that solution to wire the individual units.
Yeah.
Any other commentary on that?
I couldn't believe that it was $200,000 per antenna they were putting up in Yonkers. That seemed very expensive.
Well, I believe that's for the for an omnidirectional array, right? So I presume it's multiple sectors. Is that how it works? I
assume it's an AB kind of 4-sector thing, which actually is an interesting quick sidebar. I did order the Tavana gear. Tirana, whatever it is. Yeah. So we will have that up and running here in July to see if this is the greatest thing since peanut butter. So we'll see.
Can you please tell me what you find? Because I can't even get a call scheduled with them. So.
No, I everyone was talking about how this was like the greatest thing in the world. So I just bought a system, and we'll see what it does. It may be good. Who knows? We'll see.
The reaction from Deb Simpier, who's also been on this show before and does a lot of really great like grassroots work, kind of like very practical, low cost stuff. She was like, "Oh, it looks really nice and spendy." Like,
oh, it was, yeah. They're proud of it. Let me tell you that they're real proud of it. But I learned long ago in this technical world, don't ever believe the white paper you get or the tech sheet. You got to buy it, mount it, and see what it does.
Yeah, so we're going to be reporting on that as you go through that over the course of the summer.
Well, apparently it's good enough to get RDOF grant or award to do gigabit, so it must be.
Is it?
Yes.
Well, Doug, from your
company, a company has a $400 million RDOF award using that.
Which company?
One of the wireless guys down in Texas. Which one is it?
Nextlink, probably then.
Nextlink.
AEG or something like that.
Yeah.
Kim, Doug, what has your experience been with these wireless operators about replacing all their gear on the towers and at the home? Is it? I mean, I always throw out 5 years. Is that accurate?
It's no longer than 7.
Okay.
Yeah, like I usually say 5 to 7 when we talk about that.
Right.
And what are you guys quoting right now as far as gigabit life?
Gigabit, like in what?
Like so, fiber into a building, and then gigabit to Ethernet. What type of life do you have? What has it been around now? 18 years. How much life do you think's left in it?
In just the fiber and that connectivity, we don't know. I mean, that's like at the beginning we projected like 25 to 30 years, but we just don't even know at this point because it's still looking good.
I've been telling people about half. We're about halfway. So about another 20 years on, so in theory, if you had a switch, you could put it into somebody's house and have it sit there for 20 years versus the wireless stuff we're going to pull out we'll have replaced it 4 times in the same.
It's really funny that we still have ONTs in our network that only go up to 100 meg. Like we've been trying to call these people to get them to switch it out, and you can't. They're just like, well, it works.
They're like, I'm happy.
Why would I?
Right.
Yeah,
I'm happy.
that's funny. We had to actually unplug ours before they would call us, and then we went and changed them.
Speaking of the life of gear, we have a picture. And I think we're asking Travis first to identify what we're looking at here.
Let's see what we got.
Telecom Peekaboo. Here we go.
Is that a CSU DSU? Oh, no, hold on. There's a modem there. I think the top one's a CSU DSU. The bottom one's a 2400 baud modem. What do you think, Doug? Kim?
Yep. That's definitely a 2400 baud modem. I used to have one of those.
Is that hold on. No, that's a 300 baud, 1200 baud modem on top. Well, it says modem technology. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's multiple 3s. I see.
Yeah, it should probably. Yeah, those are some dusty relics from the past.
That's what I noticed. I didn't notice. I was just looking. I was like, can I get like a cloth to wipe this off? Because this is giving my OCD.
Yeah, I have a drawer of microfiber for this situation.
You notice they're still working.
They are. Yeah.
That was the cool thing about the gear in those days is they were good for 40 years. Honest to God.
That's like that's why I thought the top one was a CSU DSU for a T1. Finest piece of technology ever. They still run today. They never fail. Adtran was amazing. Yeah, whose are those?
Let's bring Ryan. Ryan, are these in the office behind you?
Can't hear you.
You're muted.
You're muted.
You get your big shot, and then you just don't even want to talk.
I blew it already. Thank God. Put me backstage, Henry. I saw him on Twitter. There's a guy I know who's writing a book on the history of networking in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and he shared it. And so I did a reverse image search, and it popped up in the 1989 catalog for Micro Educational Magazine. They were a direct mailer supplier of computer parts, and I'll throw the link in the chat here if anybody's interested in looking a little more into the catalog. But yeah, they were selling them for $299.
And you would have put one of these in a school so you could bring a little bit of broadband to several rooms is what they used them for. Yeah.
And what, like $299 in 1990 is what? That's got to be like on the order of I would guess $800, $900 today.
More like $500-$600, but still not cheap. Yeah.
And the sad part is that I'm old enough that I had both of those computers and used them.
Now, I just want to know, right? That was an image from this magazine?
No, that was an image from a guy who's rebuilding one and got it to receive data, couldn't get it to send data.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
That's because once you unplug them, then they can go bad. But if you never unplug them, they'll work for 40, 50 years. Yeah.
He said the PCB was all bubbly and some of the capacitors were all burnt out, but he got some data to come down the pipe to him.
Well, I have a couple 1200 baud modems if he's looking to get them fired up again. So,
thank you, Rye. We and for people who aren't aware, Rye is the head of our research efforts at Community Broadband Networks, and has been terrific behind the scenes to make sure that this show runs well. So we have another quick topic, which Doug wrote about, but I just want to throw this at you, Kim, first to see if you're reading Doug every morning and how you respond. How do you insure your network? So if I'm building a municipal fiber network and I'm like, I can't find anyone to quote me an insurance rate on it, what do I do?
Go to another insurance company. I don't know on this one. This is like the one you've stumped me on. Now I'm.
Yes, I feel so good about myself today.
You'll hate the
Now
answer.
I'm the jerk.
Does Utopia carry insurance in the event of a flood? Or
Yeah, no, we do. We carry a lot of insurance.
Well, you insure the huts, the buildings. You don't insure the actual fiber because FEMA insures it. So. Yes.
Yeah, no, I always hear the insurance conversation and what do we insure and all this, and then I walk out of the room because I'm like, oh gosh, if I have to know all the geek stuff, I don't have to get the finance and the insurance talk.
Yeah, so I thought it was interesting that Doug noted that FEMA insures, like if there's an event that's that bad, basically, your rates would have been so high anyway that you would have bankrupted you. And then what I thought was interesting was a follow-on then, Doug, I think you brought this up, is that you also insure yourself in other ways. For instance, like when you are, I don't know if you did this or if this was a conversation that resulted from your post, but if you, for instance, do locates, you insure yourself by documenting that you did the locate correctly so that someone else will fix something.
If you don't break us often, that's absolutely a good insurance. Yeah. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we've had that situation.
Every single new ISP calls me up and asks me that question. Where do I find insurance? And the reason they ask it is because some banker asked them. So, yep.
I do have a question for you. At what point does the federal government just not have any money if they're insuring and printing money like they are right now?
If the federal government
has always
is
done that because, let's face it, a hurricane that knocks out half of the network in a city, I mean, you can't insure that. The insurance would be 20% of the cost of the network.
Well, it's why we have national flood insurance. It just doesn't work. In California, it's going to have, federal fire insurance or something like that, because there's no way a marketplace can handle events of that magnitude. But I think the answer to your question,
the 80 or 90% of the money goes to homes and to networks. That's what FEMA's for. So, yep.
But before Travis always hits me up on this in our private conversations where he's like, "Oh, they're just printing money again." And the answer is that when the government...
is that the way I sound?
I don't think I did it justice, but it's not too far off.
Yeah.
If the government's doing its job correctly, and I think this is true of the money we're seeing put into the fiber networks now, we print money. And we do it to make sure that the economy grows faster than the debt grows. And it's when you have bad policy and you're printing money that you get into trouble. But as long as we are making the pie grow large enough to handle the debt that we're creating, then it's not as much of a problem. So that's my answer.
Is this how you get it? Is this how you get Travis to shut up?
Put him to sleep. Those nighttime calls.
Oh yeah, no. I'll be like, all right, Chris, what are they doing now? Where did this other $800 trillion come from?
And for people who are interested, $800 trillion is an order of magnitude. I think it's roughly 20x the size of our debt.
Yes.
Today.
Yeah.
Should we do another bet? You didn't do real well on that chicken wings there, sir.
Yes, and boy, when I look at what's happening around this world and this country, I do not want to make any bets right now of sure things. So holy forking shirt balls is what I have for this topic. Utopia has decided. Utopia, you're in front of what, like 130,000 homes now, 140,000 homes, maybe in that neighborhood.
In Utah, yeah, but
Right.
within Idaho Falls and Yellowstone, it's going to be more. But yeah, right now.
So, what's 5.5 million across 38 rural counties across California, and possibly some of the most expensive to build network in the entire nation. What is going on in California, Kim?
Well, I mean, is there something going on in California?
I hope
But
so.
anyway, so no, I think that us at Team Utopia really were feeling that we didn't have enough to do and we weren't growing enough. So we just wanted to add a little more on our plate. But this past week, it was announced that UTOPIA Fiber and Golden State Connect Authority have signed an MOU that we are going to work together, and that UTOPIA Fiber would be the operational partner. Golden State Connect Authority is under the RCRC umbrella, and that is they cover 38 counties in the most rural parts of California. So they are taking on a huge endeavor along with us. We are just the partner helping them along on this journey, but it is definitely a journey, and we're just in the really initial stages of it. But we hope to be announcing the first areas hopefully soon.
Can I ask what RCRC is?
It's the rural, and this is where I'm going to be. It's like rural counties of rural California, or rural. It says it's representing the rural counties of California.
So like a big economic development group or something.
No, I think it's like the lobbying association, right?
It's under the state. It's under the state. It's a state authority.
Okay.
But
Now, Kim, I like to imagine that press release came out and you marched down the hall and just started pounding on Roger's door. What did you do?
I like to say that I wish I was. I've known about this for a long time. This kind of started, and I didn't even know about it at the time, is that I spoke under the CPUC in March of 2020. So they were looking at this a little bit, starting to kind of see what was happening, because they were really, they've always been very intrigued with open access, and that they just want to put in the infrastructure. So I think they had been looking at Utopia for a long time, and then they started up conversations, and we were like, can we make this happen? And to say that it is a huge endeavor is an understatement, to say the least, because I think that a lot of people think that California is very connected, but it isn't, right? It is a...
Let me just say two words: AT&T and Frontier in rural areas.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, some of the staff came out, and some of the county commissioners came out to Team Utopia a couple weeks ago, and to see and talk to them and what they've heard over the years, and really listen to their stories of why they're doing this. It was that they're sick of just hearing the same old, and they're taking their destiny into their own hands. And I think that is a huge statement. And I'm kind of honored that they even wanted to work with us. But I think open access is seeing a huge uptick in the United States, and I think we're going to continue to see that. And by California going in this direction, I think it's huge, and we're just honored.
It's going to be really interesting, because some of those counties in the mountains, like Tuolumne County, which is right at the entrance to the national park, there's no flat place in the whole county. I mean, it's going to be really interesting.
Well, it's interesting, because you have Alpine County that has 300 homes in it, and to say how this is going to cost, but I think this is really going in conjunction with what California is doing with the California Middle Mile project, right? Because they are putting those middle mile areas hopefully into some of these counties, and that helps get those connectivity into these counties a little bit easier, to make these things a little bit more economically feasible. But I think California is making big moves to connect their state, and I think a lot of people should take notice and follow suit, because, like, let's be honest, California went from what it was, they defined broadband less than 2 years ago as 6.1 to
AT&T did for them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's just really, I think it's huge. I think it's huge news for the industry in general, and municipal broadband and what that means.
Rye points out Rural County Representatives of California, RCRC.
Okay. Thank you, Rye.
And So one of the things that I think is interesting is that I think the loan loss reserve fund was in part designed to help this out. But since then, y'all went ahead with Yellowstone Fiber and demonstrated that you can borrow money at a very affordable rate without needing public backing. And so I'm very curious to see how the financing of this comes out in the end. So I think it's something to watch.
I think it is, but I think, and I don't want to say this, but I don't know if we could get Yellowstone Fiber across the finish line in this financing market right now. I think that it's the financing and the bond market right now is very different than it was even a few months ago. Right. And what is happening, and I think you have to be agile, and I think you have to have all approaches on the table right now of what you have in your arsenal when you go out and build these networks, because the markets are just rapidly changing with this economic environment that we're seeing right now.
Massive turmoil. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Travis, do you have any reactions to this?
Congratulations, Kim. From my understanding, California is an incredibly easy state to work in, so I wish you the best. I think
there's no regulations or anything.
Nothing to worry about. The operating costs are incredibly low. There's no political juggernaut or anything. I mean, I'm really looking forward to a huge success for you. So
it will be really odd, Kimberly. You'll have no problem being familiar with the idea of a very powerful entity in the legislature trying to kneecap you constantly. It's in no way what you've been dealing with the whole time at Utopia.
I think when I knew this press release was going out, I think I had a little bit, maybe a couple glasses of wine the night before, because I said, what does this do? This puts a direct aim on Utopia, and people are going to be telling our story and being out there trying to tell all the bad years of Utopia. So I laugh because it is a huge endeavor. But when you said, Chris, and I don't think I answered your question, if I was just going to hit Roger in the face because of what he's doing, a lot of these projects I've brought to the table, which I sometimes.
No, I figured that.
Roger says to me, Kim, he said this, we just drove up here this morning. He said, Kim, I just want to let you know that most of these things are your problem. So how busy you are because of you. And I'm like, fair enough, Roger, fair enough. I do this to myself, but I think all of us on this call are so passionate about broadband that we're working our tails off because we want to see this grow throughout the country. Even Travis, I mean, he's even back at home after his big vacation across the country.
Oh, this was the biggest mistake ever. I'm so cynical right now. It's snowing here. I mean, it's literally snowing in Minnesota. It's April 14th, and I have to pay my taxes on Monday too. So
you get free wings tonight, so you got something to look forward to.
I know, taxes and snow. Welcome to Minnesota.
I think Travis is going to be inspecting. You're mostly in Northern California in the Sierras, it looks like, but I think there's a little bit. You got that Imperial County, I think. Travis is going to be helping you out there next winter.
I'm ready wherever it's warm.
Well, so one last thought here before we bring on Jeff. God, I've known Jeff all these years, and I look at his name and I'm like, it's Reiman? I'm pretty sure, but he'll tell me in a second before we bring him on. But before we bring him on, there was an interesting conversation that was relayed to me by a friend who was talking to some folks in DC and was making the case that we need co-ops in rural areas. And apparently the answer from some of the folks in DC that matter was no, rural areas don't need a co-op. They need competition. And I was like, are you effing kidding me? Like, have we learned nothing? So this led to a whole big thing with me on Twitter. For those who follow me, I did a big thread about what electrification, how it actually worked and stuff like that, and led to an interesting series of discussions. But I feel like California is then calling my bluff to be well, we can't have competition in rural areas. That's obviously the way to do it. But I just wanted to throw that out there and see if anyone had any other thoughts about that, because I think it's just really dumb to say the first priority in rural areas is competition. It might be, if you can do open access, but all these electric co-ops, I don't want to tell them to piss off because they're not doing open access. They're doing a great job. Mm-hmm. So anyway.
Well, it's ridiculous if you think competition means building two networks. That's never going to happen anywhere in the world. Holy moly. So, what does that mean? Co-ops, all of their members want them for the provider. They wouldn't buy it from anybody else. People don't understand the power of a co-op. People love co-ops. I mean, people love co-ops. It's a family thing. Your co-op is your family. You have to understand how people, because they still remember when they didn't have electricity. So, yeah.
I
Kim?
think that I think that co-ops are a great solution. I don't think that open access is going to work in every community, and I don't think that every model is going to work in every community. I think that I was just up in Grant County, Washington, and I was having this conversation of, does broadband fit in these areas, or is competition there? And I said, what's happening in Grant County, Washington is not going to happen in St. Louis, right? And I think that that's the same thing with co-ops, and how do you get these? But and one point I wanted to make is that not every co-op wants to get into broadband. And I think that is some part of the problem there, is that I've talked to some co-ops that just want to partner with somebody. They don't want to handle it. They just want to partner. So yes, I think co-ops are a great solution if they're willing to dive into this space.
And then the last thing I think I might bring up is just, I'm curious to see what happens in California with the rural independents. There's a handful of them. I think some of them are doing a really good job, and I'm curious to see how they react and how they are, included in this planning around the open access network in these 38 counties.
Well, they will have a chance to get in a whole lot more places if they decide to take advantage of it. But they also may join the AT&T side and fight against it. It'll be an interesting call. Yeah. So.
Thanks, Doug. Don't stress me out anymore.
They will, whatever they do, they will all do it together. So be prepared.
I think we're prepared, but thank you.
So, and let me, I do want to make sure that I am well aware, but maybe other people are not. Kim plays, you've played a remarkable role in traveling the country, spreading the gospel, working behind the scenes to make this stuff happen. And I just like to pretend that Roger's forcing you to do things as a joke. So
I do too. I blame him for all of my problems in life. So don't just think it's this. I
assume that half of your salary ultimately comes from you using your house as a B&B, as an Airbnb while you're gone.
Yeah, it's my cat probably rents it out. But no, I wish that was the case.
Let's bring that Roger, but I'm going to start blaming him for all my problems.
Let's bring Jeff on. In a previous show recently, we had Doug. I think what Doug said was, quote, "Huntsville Fiber is the worst, dumbest thing I've ever heard of in my life," and then said that.
And they have some guy named Jeff there. Oh my God, did he ever screw it up? Isn't that what I said, Jeff?
I heard. Yeah, that's right.
Jeff, did I butcher your name?
You sure did, Christopher.
Oh,
you sure did. It's Jeff Reiman.
Reiman.
And I got to tell you though, Christopher, you said something else. You said all these years we've known each other, and has been so many years. I just want to say, as far back as I can remember, Christopher, it's been your voice who has really led the way in so many ways in this industry. The importance of connectivity has never been clearer. That hasn't always been the case, but it's been through your education. You do it. You're educated. You're informed. You're passionate. But what's most important, you present it in a way that's understandable and enjoyable, and in many ways that encapsulates Connect This podcast webinar.
Connect This.
Connect This. That's why I so appreciate that opportunity.
Come on, Jeff. I got to spend dinner with this guy. Please.
Jeff,
my head is growing bigger by the minute here. Come on.
Oh,
I deeply appreciate that. Raise your hand if you remember Jeff Daly with App Rising. Huh? I was just talking to him today. Back in the day, those of us that I remember telling people at the FCC in 2012 that I thought most of the U.S. would have fiber by 2020.
Gosh, I wish I would have made that bet.
I was exuberant. Buying you wings for the decade.
This is the same bet that you think that the BEAD money is going to go. All the BEAD money is going to go to good use too, Chris. So.
Oh, that was never a bet. No, I've always said that, even if they misspend half of the money, it will still be a bargain for the benefits we get out of the rest of it. So that's I do think there's a question. It'd be interesting to come back if we can get Larry Irving on, because he and I went back and forth on this, and whether this money will be used for actual racial equity reasons, or if we'll mostly see states that have significant rural Black populations and urban Black populations, if they don't get much of the money. And so that's something to really keep an eye on. But the reason we have Jeff on is because Jeff was intimately involved in building the Huntsville model, where Huntsville City Utilities has operated a network that runs around the city, and then Google leases that network and drops off to homes. There's other ISPs and city utilities or city branches that also use that fiber for a variety of purposes. And Jeff felt that we did not correctly characterize some parts of it. And so this is important enough. I wanted to make sure that we talked about it. So Jeff, do you recall what we got wrong?
I do. Some of the math was a little bit incorrectly stated. And it's, again, I don't just want to come to be overly complimentary, but when Doug Dawson speaks, everybody listens. And because he's such a respected voice, I just wanted to clarify some of the comments that were made. And it just had to do with the ratio of investment that the utility is making relative to the anchor tenant. In the case there of Huntsville, is Google Fiber. It's a much higher percentage of that shared capital cost, which the utility is receiving because of the 20-year lease, which Google Fiber committed to when that network was announced. So that was the purpose of coming on here. Obviously, this is a forum to educate those that are listening on all of the available options. And Kim, you said something obviously so relevant, that there's no one size fits all. There's no off-the-shelf approach. We're typically not proponents of open access in the markets that we serve. And I'll explain why. And I think it's important to explain why. I'll often say when it comes to tenants, the most interested are often the least qualified. They may not have the financial wherewithal to be able to sustain the challenges that will inevitably come in operating a network. But that's obviously something that you at Utopia have addressed. And that's so important. At the Broadband Group, we always emphasize far greater opportunities for challenges than for success in any endeavor. And it's appreciating what those challenges are before you move forward on any investment of any type. So again, thank you for the opportunity.
1 second. I think Jeff just invited himself to our panel, Kim, to talk about different open access models. We'll have to see whether or not that works.
And first of all, Jeff, I thought we were going to be friends, but then you said you weren't a proponent of open access, and now I don't know. Like, we might can work this out on the.
I'll say that here's what's undeniable. It's undeniable. Utopia in its early days and its formative days was a disaster. Here's what's undeniable. Under the leadership of you and Roger, it's a complete success, and you should be very proud of it, and the industry should be proud of it. And now expanding potentially into California, you're helping to educate those entities on their opportunities and then helping them implement it and operate it. Is that how I understand it?
Yeah, we're just going to help them. We're helping them, and we might be we're going to be the operational partner on the back end side of it, but they will own it. Definitely.
So basically, you're going to be like, "Don't do that. That's a really bad idea."
We're just going to, I always say what we're going to do is we're going to tell them what we did like 15 times in the early years and tell them, don't do that, because we've already done it and it doesn't really work. But Jeff, you have one thing wrong. The reason Utopia turned around was when they hired me in 2010. Yeah, like that's 2010 is where the turnaround started happening.
Well, Matt Rantanen, who I'd work with on the tribal broadband boot camps and a variety of other things, he'll say that with Tribal Digital Village, they learned 15 ways to not build a network. Now, before we get too much deeper into that, Jeff, you're in your office, right?
I sure am, here in fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada.
So I visited there. You have, these plaques and stories from work that you all did, your father had done in the 80s on fiber optics. Not everyone's heard of the Broadband Group, but you've worked most recently in Colorado Springs. You were working in the interesting project with CenturyLink in Springfield, Missouri. And just so people know, you're a consulting business that works with clients in building these networks, right?
25 years ago, when few people really appreciated what broadband was, Tom Reiman, together with my mother, Cindy Reiman, who's now the owner of the company after my father passed in January of last year, called it the Broadband Group. And now here we are in the center of all the attention, with the appreciation of all the value it brings. So yes, consultant advisory firm. Huntsville, Alabama was our first work with the utility, where the electric utility essentially said, we're putting fiber in our network. We need to do this for our own operational needs, everything for the grid modernization thesis. At the same time, Mayor Tommy Battle, this was the early days of when Google Fiber first announced they were entering the market. Mayor Battle said, we want to be a gig city. So the utility came to us and said, is there a way we could be a bit more strategic in terms of how we're building out network for our own internal operational needs, while potentially also serving the connectivity interests of the residents and businesses of the city of Huntsville, Alabama. We worked with the utility. We helped them understand the various options. They elected to move forward on a path where they design their network for their own internal operational needs. They're doing it regardless, but put additional capacity in there so that a provider could be the anchor tenant to serve every address that it passes. That tenant was Google Fiber. That network was successfully completed earlier last year. We celebrated that completion at the Fiber Broadband Association, and it's a great industry success. What's also relevant is that the utility is not in the business of being a broadband service provider. They're focused on their core competency and is the anchor tenant that takes on the marketing, the sales, the operational risk of delivering the broadband services to the residents and businesses. What's also notable is that the anchor tenant pays the utility not based on revenue share, not based on performance, but for every resident that is passed. So whether Google gets 0 market share or 100% market share, the utility gets a set, predictable monthly payment over the course of the 20 years. And it's a publicly available rate card. So it's not a secret that it's about 100,000 homes passed, $5 per every passing, 20-year lease. You do the math, you see that Google is contributing far more than the percentage that was discussed in an earlier show. And that doesn't include the backbone lease, which Google is paying, which is roughly $100,000 a month, maybe a little bit less than that. And the additional tenants that they have for some point-to-point connections. They don't have a second anchor tenant on there, but again, that wasn't the intended goal. The goal was to serve the interests of the utility. The second market was Springfield, Missouri, city utilities, where the anchor tenant was CenturyLink. Notable in that for 2 reasons. One, Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm unaware of any other provider of that size and scale that's using somebody else's infrastructure to serve residents and businesses citywide. What's most notable, it's not a CenturyLink territory. For the first time, as far as I know, they effectively crossed the Rubicon and are competing head-to-head with AT&T in that market, and I think are doing very well because of the fiber optic infrastructure that they're providing. Our third market, Colorado Springs, the largest in terms of the size and scale of the network. There's a lot of criticism coming at the Broadband Group now, and that's because of the success that this model is having. So we accept that criticism. We're just going to keep doing good things. The the Springfield network is being completed at the end of this year, 8 months ahead of schedule. So we're really proud of it and look forward to the success there in Colorado Springs.
I was talking to a reporter who clearly
absolutely the first place where any big ISP decided to step into somebody else's market on someone else's network. There's not even little examples of it. I mean, there's no little towns like that. So that was such a surprising announcement for them to do that.
It's a testament to Tom Reiman, the wisdom that has gone into this approach, where, as we say, respects the metrics of the industry. When I first sat down with the leadership of CenturyLink at their headquarters in Colorado, the leadership said, that's not the way we build networks. That's not the way we operate networks. 3 months later, they signed on as the anchor tenant for that citywide build. I say the more you understand this model, the more attractive it becomes, but it is not the model for every city of any size, of any scale. It's the model for Huntsville, it's the model for Springfield, and it's the model for Colorado Springs based on the research that was done there.
I'm pretty sure that was Tom Reiman.
When your father started the business, did he have to spend the first 15 minutes telling people what broadband was?
When Tom Reiman started broadband, my goodness.
In those days, that was not a very common word. Yeah.
He used to walk that, and that's what true visionary is, right? When everyone says, "Oh, what's this fella talking about?" and then suddenly it's the hottest topic in business.
You know what I love about Travis is when you said $5 a month, he looked up to do calculations in his head rather than looking down to a calculator.
Oh no, I already did the math to see if it was worth it. So where's the next city we get to do?
That's right. Hey, like I said, we work with a lot of cities. Oftentimes, we take more pride in helping cities what not to do, cities, utilities, what not to do. So firms engage us, and we say, guys, it's just not the right fit here. So
what happens after 20 years?
I beg your pardon?
What happens after 20 years? Google just walks away?
They could walk away.
Okay.
Well, here's what I think is interesting. I'm really curious to get Jeff and Kim's take on this, because I feel like people chafe at whether this is open access or not, and I feel like, I don't know, we don't have a shared definition of open access. The thing to keep in mind is that, like, the model of Utopia is you got a lot of providers to choose from, and you can switch among them pretty easily. The model of Huntsville is that you have an anchor tenant that presumably has been vetted, that the community believes will bring a certain element of competition. And if they do a really bad job, someone's going to come in and compete with them at a pretty low cost, right? They're enabling that potential for competition. But what I think is interesting is in Colorado Springs already, first of all, I had a reporter call me with some interesting questions that clearly were put there by opposition.
Oh, yeah.
That were targeting not just Google or not just Ting, but you.
I had a lovely questioning the integrity of myself, the Broadband Group, my late father. It's just incredibly insulting, incredibly weak, but it's fine. We take on the criticism, we'll answer for it, and we'll move forward and put forth a successful model.
Right. But anyway, so this is a model in Colorado Springs where Ting is launching as the anchor partner, and Google is like, hey, we went in. And this is going to be very interesting to see how the model moves forward with then two powerful companies going head to head in that sort of situation, if that's what develops.
If it's what develops. Remember, though, these networks are being built for the utility. This is not being built to serve the interests of the anchor tenants. Jay Stowe, the CEO of the time of Huntsville, said, we're doing this. The leadership of Springfield said, we're doing this. Aram Benyamin said, we're doing this. We're making this investment for the utility. Is there a way in which we can make it a better return, protect our ratepayers by having a shared cost structure with an anchor tenant? They don't want to put unlimited capital to allow for an unlimited amount of service providers to then compete with the private enterprise. It's a benefit, it's a byproduct, but it's to advance the goals of the utility in and of itself. That's the primary objective.
Kim, did you have
that's a PR speech that you have down, like Jeff. You've got that. What is open access? Like, if you're going into that, I think it's like when you're talking about the Huntsville model, I do not believe that it's open access, right? Because unless you have if you have one anchor provider, open access, I believe is bringing competition. That is basically, I think that is a different model. I think in the Colorado Springs model, if you have two tenants, I think you can argue that it is open access, right? I think where I have some like issues with is, at least in the Huntsville model, that Google owns the drop, right?
Absolutely. And by the way, that's one of the reasons why, and it's the only reason why an anchor tenant like a CenturyLink is going to buy into it. Again, respecting the metrics of the industry allows them to own the customer. There's still a barrier of entry. And so that's a criticism. Oh, gee whiz, it doesn't open up for unlimited competition, but what it opens up is for healthy competition. And when you get a qualified provider like a Google, like a CenturyLink,
Allo uses using this model in some markets.
It allows them to, and you look at what has occurred in Huntsville since that announcement, it's ranked as the city with the most improved available speeds throughout the city. And that's because of the entrance of Google Fiber, the competitive investments that it encouraged. So I don't think that unlimited competition is what is needed. It's increased competition, and that's what this model achieves. And Kim, I don't want this to be my model's better than your model, because again, we want to see great success, and we're so pleased to see your success.
It'll be really interesting to see.
Doug, hold on a second. Sorry, I think Kim wanted to. She got cut off earlier as well.
Oh, no. I think we can agree to disagree. I think I like at least for me is, I think unlimited of 100 or so providers on a network. Yes, it gets a little bit confusing for the end user. But I believe that you're providing, in some aspects, it could be another monopoly by them owning the drop, because you're not going to encourage another person to come in there, at least off those lines, right? But I mean, that's just my opinion. We agree that we want our DMARC is at the ONT inside the house. And then the providers can go from there, and that gives the ability to switch to another provider. But yes, I think that we view healthy competition, and we're enabling the smaller ISPs to survive in this marketplace in which they can't have the capital to build these networks. Like one of our biggest providers on the network is X-Mission, which is the largest or the oldest ISP in the state of Utah, started in 1994. I do not believe, and I think they would say this too, that they could not compete today unless they had an open access network like UTOPIA to survive on, because of the marketplace. So it's just how you use differently.
Kim Lebowski there with that's just like my opinion, man. But Doug, I want to make sure you get a chance to finish up.
Well, actually, I was going to say very similar to her, because I'm just very curious in what happens when you get two of them competing. Just the physical act of trying to get two buried drops to a house. I mean, they're going to just be cutting each other's drops left and right. That's you don't really want two buried drops going to the same house.
Sure.
And so
I suspect we might see them selling it to each other, but
or,
go ahead,
yeah,
Jeff.
and they might make an arrangement with each other to go pay me back for my drop, because that, otherwise it's just real confusing.
If you have a second tenant, and again, right now there's only the one tenant, it's just Ting right now in Colorado Springs. But again, here's the beauty of it. That drop only gets built when they have a subscriber, and that's why the tenant likes it so much. That's why the utility likes it so much. Travis, you can attest, the drops are such a challenge, such a headache going onto people's property. Those drops aren't done unless they have a subscriber to then collect revenues against the capital and the work that's needed to put that drop in. So to have two drops, you would have somebody call for a service, they would cancel that service, and they would call for a second person service. That's when you get the duplicative drops. But
And people will do that. When the new provider gets there, they'll go, "Hey, I want to change to the new guy." It's going to happen, sure.
I don't know. I think it may depend on pricing a little bit, but one of the things that we've talked about in previous shows is that when people are happy and they're paying a reasonable rate, kind of like we talked about with those folks that got the 100 megabit, the BPON or whatever they have from Utopia back. Well, it wasn't BPON for Utopia, but the old modems. There's a lot of people who just are like, nope, I've got something that works. Even if the price goes down, I don't want to change anything because I don't want it to break. But Travis, I saw you shaking your head a little bit about the multiple drops.
Well, let's not forget that like most houses in Minneapolis have 4 drops to them right now.
Well, 2 or 3 of them are aerial, right?
Sure, but they also have a gas drop and a sewer drop and a water drop. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going up to the home. But I think the thing is, and again, this is only my opinion, but I think the open access model is great until Google comes. And I've told you this 100 times, Chris. Who in their right mind is going to compete with Google? Owning the network and owning the content.
Ting will. But that's so. I mean, I'll say this again. Every time when I talk to people at Google Fiber about that concern, they laugh at me. They're like, "Do you think people at YouTube answer my phone calls?" No. Like they're like we're the pimple on the butt. It's just
you can say that, but I just never liked that idea. We're open to the internet, but when pieces of the internet are that own major content you're trying to supply to customers, I'm not competing against them. My only other argument against I would like to go back through the whole open access model again sometime, because I'm probably as confused as everybody else is on it, because at the surface it feels like a race to zero.
We just haven't seen that. I mean, Kim was in Grant County, and this is a really good question because I don't understand why we don't see it. But Grant County's been doing this for 22 years, right? I mean, and they haven't seen a race to zero yet, so I don't think they will necessarily.
A large part of those 22 years, they only had one residential ISP. So that
makes it easier not to race to zero.
Yeah. So,
but I just don't understand, like in the Utopia model and potentially in Jeff's model, why somebody couldn't come in and do a Starbucks to them, where you buy up all the coffee shops and you lower the rate.
Kim will answer that.
And you charge $2 a month till no other competition's there, and then slowly ratchet it back up.
Yeah, I think we view this very much as a partnership, right? If you race it to the bottom, you're not going to have healthy ISPs on your network, right? So you have to protect not only the consumer, but the ISP and that whole thing, and make them an equal partner in this partnership. Because an ISP who's making $1 a month margins on a customer is not going to be a healthy ISP, and they're not going to last. And that is some of the issues of the early Utopia, is that we had bad ISPs on the network. And so we really work closely with the ISP to make sure that we don't see that. But I would want to go back and say one of the ISP that gets the most residential sales on our network has the highest cost. Consumers, and just to say this too, I'm in Idaho Falls, and I was just meeting with the Idaho Falls people, and they said what we see is that the consumers are not necessarily picking the lowest priced option. Because as a group, and I'm a marketer at heart, it's like we associate, if it's cheap, it's not going to be good necessarily. So I'm seeing a lot more people go into the middle category than I am for the low category at all.
But
how do they every time you say consumer?
I mean, that's the whole problem I see. If everyone's using the same stuff, how do you differentiate one ISP from another?
I think it's a lot of it's customer service. Some of it, I see like the filtering options, the ESPN, the Netflix peering, kind of like those kind of things. It really just depends. A lot of them have we have one ISP who likes a lot of people just like their name, or I have another ISP who does a lot of community engagement, or their local. One of them, a lot of ISPs were the local WISP in the community before they came on the network, so they have a community presence. A lot, and if you go on the community Facebook groups that I see, a lot of people are like, well, why should I pick this provider? And you'll see a lot of like talk about which providers are better and why.
So
One of the things, Travis, to answer your question is, remember, these ISPs have to have technicians, and the Utopia network would spread out. They don't all have technicians in all the towns. So the guys who's local, has a big leg up on it.
Again, I'm not saying
gonna
it's
have
a model. I wonder if other people are as confused as I am about it.
Well, let me ask if Rye will dig out the show where we talked about this. We had the different ISPs. We had Pete Ashdown from X-Mission, and we had Beehive on and talked about this. And some people can go back and watch that episode because we addressed this specifically. We are going to have to wrap this section up in a second. Jeff, I just wanted to reiterate what you had said in coming on here, which is that I think a lot of people assume that the city is sort of taking a bath on it, and that is not the case. I mean, I think in Huntsville, you make the point that Google paid more than people assume, and that the city is very happy with what they've got for what they've paid for.
Yeah, and criticism of Springfield was that the cost of the total network was more than was originally budgeted. You talk to the leadership of Springfield, and it's important to understand those looking at this industry that building a network is not like building a home where you know how many doors, you know how many windows it's going to be. You're in the process of building that network. A new community opens up. You have new laterals that are going to be extending the network, naturally adding to the overall cost of the infrastructure that is being built. So having cost overruns isn't necessarily a reflection of any inefficiencies, but just the natural growth of the market itself.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff, for coming on. We really appreciate that.
Christopher, thank you so much. Kim, Doug, Travis, it was a pleasure.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate
And now,
it.
before you go,
next time he's going to get your name right.
Jeff Reiman. It's Jeff Reiman, because I'm just going to ignore the I. I'm just ignoring the E. I'm just going to ignore the first vowel, and I can remember that for some reason. We'll see. Jeff Reiman, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you in Houston.
We'll see you in Houston.
There's a question in the chat that people wanted to know about. Hey, Kim, backbone costs. This was based on a number that he had tossed out regarding how much Google's paying in Huntsville.
Yeah, our providers, like, I think he's like asking like how much our providers pay like to be pass it. And it's they don't have to pay per home. They pay per subscriber on the operation and maintenance cost on the back end.
Right. So there's a variety of ways, like Jeff had alluded to. There's revenue shares. There's a cost per home connected. There may also be a cost per home passed, which is an incentive to make sure that ISPs aren't just content to grab a few customers and then give up on marketing, which is something that Utopia had experienced, unfortunately.
But on the Utopia network, now that they're full, if they have an ISP who only wants to come to one town, Kim's perfectly fine with that. I mean, they don't make them go everywhere.
Right at this point. And so this is, I think, I do want to get to this issue of the suburbs and make sure we have enough time to talk about it. But like, I do feel like, the Utopia network is not for a Travis Carter to come on it, most likely. There's a few companies that have come on it, but I think that that particular open access approach is for maybe someone who's like to get in the game, like Travis did with dial-up modems back in the day. And after they maybe develop some expertise, some industry contacts, some confidence, then maybe they start doing their own infrastructure somewhere, or maybe they're just very happy with that model. But I don't think that this is necessarily we have to figure out how to make Utopia attractive to Travis. Like, I don't think that's necessarily a goal.
We have providers from national players to local players who contact us daily of, can we get on this network? How does it work? And it's just a balance of, does it work for both parties? We are big enough that we did have problems in our beginning years because we had bad ISPs. So we want to vet them and make sure our customers and the residents of these communities are having the best experiences. And it's not worth, like I said, it's not worth having 100 providers for the sake of having 100 providers. I'd rather have 15 or 20 that are good quality providers, no matter what size or where they're located.
Paris has 100 providers, and there's no way a customer in Paris can figure out who their ISP should be. No way. Mm-hmm. That's insane. So There is one giant difference between Travis and the ISPs on that network. The guys on the network are not really building up any terminal value to sell their business. A little bit,
which I like. If we
Travis,
value competition, we can't have individual people making too much. Because Wall Street it's like a little bit of blood and wolves.
he doesn't want you to make money. He just told you.
Oh,
Well,
I mean,
you bring
make a killing.
Doug. I mean, there's very little enterprise value. But I will say one thing. We started our business on an open access network. We used phone lines, and there was 170 ISPs in our area, and it was a race to the bottom. The company that charged $9.99 got most of the customers, and then you'd go from there. So I do like Mike's comments comments though, that he's actually a user. And so it appears there still is room on the Utopia network for a far superior back end. Once you offload the traffic. So
there's also, there's doing business with people you like, and I feel like a lot of people that are on X Mission, I think they like the kind of stuff that X Mission does, the vibe that they get from them.
And they have got velocity, right? They've been there since day one, I guess, in the market.
So this is in the chat, but for people that want to dig into that open access episode, it was episode 11. If you go back to connectthisShow.com, which is not the connectthisShow.com, because that would be hard to say all the time. Last question. I want to start off with Doug. This issue of, I live in the suburbs. I'm sorry. I have a big cable provider, one of the top two, and it's decent. It's well enough that people aren't out with their pitchforks and torches, and my elected leaders aren't willing to do anything about it. What do I do if I want something better?
First off, you would be surprised how many suburbs are not happy with it. I've just an example. I've done work now in 3 suburbs of Columbus, Ohio, and when we do surveys there, the public is massively interested in getting a local provider and not the big ISPs. And the quality of the service there is not bad. So it's not, there are places where in the suburbs where the networks don't work very good. They advertise 200 and they deliver 80. When the cable company does that, they're asking for it, right? But some of these cities have excellent quality as far, they're at least for the download. And yet the people in the town really want something different. You would be surprised how many of them want a choice, and it varies very much different by town. There's other places where they could care less about getting somebody else in, and it's not the elected officials, it's the public. If the public's behind it, eventually, in the cities I've worked in, it bubbled up from the bottom up. Broadband committees finally got the government's attention, and then it moved up, and now a couple of those towns have actually found a fiber solution. So they've expected an ISP to come to town and spend their own money. So that they're getting a competitor to the cable company, which is what they really wanted. So,
Kim, that describes the 2 most recent cities that joined Utopia, right?
Yeah. Most of the new cities that we are having are cities that have 2 major incumbents in them. And I think to Doug's point, one of the things that we're seeing is, I see this all the time because we go to city council meetings and I ask them and I say, why are we sitting here? Why are we sitting in front of you telling you about broadband when you have 2 major incumbents? And they say, because we're so sick of hearing from our residents that they need better broadband. And I think that we need to understand that people have a voice and they are heard if it's loud enough to go in and say that they want something else. Because as I said this, and I asked this question in an interview to the chairman of one of our boards, Alex Jensen, and I said, so why do you think that the federal government at that time was 25.3 was enough? And that these cities are joining. And they said, because, and he said, to quote him, those cities don't view 25.3 as enough. So they're taking broadband into their own hands. And even though they are considered served, they are putting investment into their future. So I think that's what you're seeing to get some of these these suburbs on board, is just start talking to your local officials and really telling them the story.
Now, let me put a big footnote on that. There is nobody who has 2 incumbents. DSL's dead.
Oh.
Well, no, AT&T has fiber in front of tens of millions of homes, right?
Well, no, places. Well, and there, here, I live in one of those towns. The problem is, it's little 2-block areas, and around me is 11 blocks who don't have AT&T fiber. That actually makes everybody in those areas really mad.
Well, and it's interesting because one of the incumbents is CenturyLink in some of our areas, and they do have fiber in some of the areas. But too, you see that they'll put in the conduit, and they have CenturyLink boxes, but they never go in and put the fiber in. So, like,
because 3 or 4 years ago they abandoned residential fiber at build outs, right?
Well, there's like 10 towns that they announced. I think they're working on this year. I mean, they sort of
Right.
it's de minimis. And also, I would be remiss to not note that FiOS is available to like tens of millions of households as well, where there's often cable available. So
Right.
like there is some places that have two incumbents
There
that are
is.
legit.
There is. Yes.
Travis, I have one other thing that I would bring up, but I also feel like I cut you off the few times you tried to talk, and I feel really bad about it. Not really bad because I don't feel bad about things.
I like this topic because in this build season 2023, we're doing 3 suburbs of Minneapolis, so we're actually reaching out, and I have
What's the third
never
one? Edina, St. Louis Park,
Edina, St. Louis Park, and the city of St. Anthony. And it's just that there's no mystery here. I have never seen early adoption at these rates in the last 12 years of doing this. I mean, we're getting, not only are we getting a tremendous, like triple what we were getting in Minneapolis in our early phases, we're getting double or triple the number of people that are signing up for our gigabit service. So
how many people have to pre-sign in St. Paul? Just give me a number.
Where is that, by the way? I don't even know this city you keep talking about.
I'm going to bring you over here for that. What's that breakfast that
you love? But Doug actually brought up an interesting point, or maybe Kim was talking about the bottom up, because the constituents have been so vocal at city council that when we finally announced going into these into these areas, you almost felt a sigh of relief from the city manager. Like, thank God you're finally coming. We're tired of hearing about it every year. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for people.
I'm waiting for the day when they give Travis a parade.
Yeah, right.
No, but that's the thing, right? As we talked about before, I think that would not be inappropriate. But like it's more likely that they just keep moving the ball, and and this is something that some of my colleagues, people who are well intentioned, view Travis as the enemy because he has not built out to all the low income neighborhoods yet, right? And so like he keeps getting attacked, and that's one of the things that I feel like digital equity advocates who I think haven't done enough homework are missing, is that you don't want to attack someone like Travis. You want to figure out how to enable him to invest in areas where there's a difficult payback.
And for the record, we have invested and we currently serve a tremendous amount of areas that have that meet that criteria. We've got a lot of areas where have been historically underserved. So we just don't have all of them yet. So anyway, yet. We'll get there. If the weather here is terrible. We only can construct 6 months out of the year. So sorry. So
right, and then you get started, and then it gets terrible again.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to, so as we're ending, I think this might be a way that we end. I thought it might be useful because, like, it's hard for me sometimes to understand what people might be interested in. And I don't even know everyone who's in the audience. I love seeing Alan Fitzpatrick show up in the chat there. Alan does great work in as open broadband in North Carolina. And Alan, I'd like to catch up again sometime. It's been too long. But I was thinking some people might be interested in if we toss out something. I got asked a question, which was examples of counties where they're leasing excess fiber that they have. And I could come up with a few, but I'm curious if Kim and Doug particularly could come up with some.
I know a lot of counties who have tried it, but they don't really know how to get the word out. And there very few have been successful at it. There's a couple of them in the Twin City area. They outside the ring, and the trouble is people will have fiber routes, but they don't have a coherent network, and so fiber routes by themselves are worthless. It's got to be a network that gets you somewhere you want to go, and so that's where they usually fall down. But when people do build networks to go where you need to go, you end up attracting it, and that the best example is Champlain and Urbana, Illinois. So they built a really good backbone, and over time they turned that into building fiber. But normally that's not what they do. So they build a weird network and then wonder why nobody wants to get on.
Well, I think
just like Kim says, I spend all my time advising folks, don't do it the dumb way. Yeah,
Kim?
Well, yeah. What is it like? What does a long piece of fiber do for some of these places if it doesn't go anywhere? And that's what the problem is, right? It doesn't go to where these other facilities need, so they're going to have to build it anyway, and then it costs more, and then they just are like, screw it, we'll just build the whole thing ourselves instead of leasing it or using other.
I mean, one of the big NFL cities years ago hired me. They had fiber everywhere, and it was almost all completely worthless. And they just didn't believe me. And of course, they tried to sell it, and no one bought it.
Well, that also sounds like Arlington, Virginia, where they throw like a massive, like 50-page contract at you until you basically can't use it. But here, if you want to lease it.
Right.
The one that I came up with was Medina County, Ohio, where they do have a coherent network to business parks and things like that. They have multiple carriers who are using it. I think there's a few examples like that.
There's some good ones. Yeah.
But I think that's just I think it's an interesting conversation. And if people have other ideas for little questions like that, I'd be very happy to make sure that we discuss them. I think as Mike here notes in the comment that San Francisco did it, San Francisco being the city and county of San Francisco, they have a network that's managed by Scenic, which is the R&E network throughout the state. And I think San Francisco is both an example of doing it right and doing it wrong, because they have a lot of other fiber that could be doing a lot more that they just haven't used really effectively, which I think we see in larger cities often. They have these assets. The question is, and we see interesting questions popping up. I'm watching LA County closely to see what they're going to do next. But anyway, people have questions like that, like sort of like different models or things that we could brainstorm on. I think that would be, I don't know, something to try. I do not know if we're going to have a show next week or not. I need to figure it out if we can get it scheduled, if it'll work. I'm kind of stuck in limbo with some personal things and not sure that I can commit to Thursday night. So we do not know yet, but I will be trying to announce it very quickly. It's wonderful to be back, and I'll be very sad. We might do one at a non-standard time potentially. But Kim and Doug, thank you so much for being back. We'll get another one on the books very quickly to make sure that we can have you back again soon.
I just care, how bad is the snow? Is that going to stop you from making it to your wing appointment?
Oh no, it's a dusting.
I think this might be it now. Finally, this might be it.
We can't wait to hear
I was
it.
trying to give them an out here.
I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I've spent a year, sort of thinking about this, and like I just, want to pull the Band-Aid off and get going on it.
Hey, do we have? Is it still 25-3 right now?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Gigi's still not on the commission.
You want to do double or nothing?
Ever going to happen?
Do I want to go double or nothing? I really do want to go double or nothing.
I'll give you another year. Come on, I'll give you another year.
I am so dumb. I am so dumb. I cannot believe that the connection that the FCC would leave it at 25-3 until the end of February next year.
I want to see if Henry can find where you predicted we'd all have fiber by 2020.
Oh, that was in a private meeting.
You sure? There's no video. I'm paying top dollar for anyone that can prevent.
You know who was
video.
there? Claude Aiken. Claude Aiken was one of the people in that meeting at the FCC, who went on to be head of WISPA for a long time, and is now, I'm not even sure what he's up to now since he's left WISPA. Yeah, it was okay, I thought for sure the market would move more quickly. Go ahead, Travis.
Can I ask one thing? And probably for Doug and maybe Kim. Have you guys been hearing that there's going to be a tremendous shortage of handhole availability this year?
How is that possible? These things aren't that complicated. Like,
this could be the piece that prevents the vast majority of fiber networks from getting deployed.
Yes, I'm seeing that already. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But how? So these things aren't made of exotic materials, right? Like handled seems like one of those things that you could spin up another factory, not that hard. Like it's a mold, right? Like. What am I not getting?
I had a meeting yesterday that's first off, the fiber providers are not taking any new clients, and secondarily, handholds. There's just like everybody's scrambling to get them right now.
Kim, are you sweating? Is there flop sweat coming out now?
It's Idaho. We're getting the flurries. It's getting a little.
I mean, you're looking at 5.5 million, I guess, people. So only like, a few million residents, right? Or I mean, like premises. Does it freak you out? Do you have relationships that you feel, even if it's not your responsibility, I feel like you're going to be advising these folks? Like, is that a major problem?
Well, we're not building this tomorrow. I mean, this is going to be an incremental build, but yeah, I mean, I think we're looking at all of these concerns that we're seeing and how long are they going to last? Do we even know how long they're going to last at this point? We don't. I think that's when I talked about the market and everything else. I think this is going to be an interesting year to see where everything kind of goes in this next year with all of this.
Supply chain issues can clear up in 6 months, or it could take 4 years. You can't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
know.
Doug, should I take the double or nothing?
Do it. Do it.
I would agree with you on this one. Yeah, there's no way they're going to keep 25.3 for another year.
Even though it's going to be a 2-2 FCC because the Democrats will screw up Gigi's nomination.
Well,
like I just feel like right now I'm super pessimistic.
That's basically the bet you're making. Yes.
God, Gigi, there's almost no one that is more qualified to be on the FCC. Not because I agree with her on many positions, but because she takes it seriously and she'll do a very good job. She's the best possible person to be on the FCC right now from anyone that I've ever known in this space, I feel like.
Should we maybe sweeten the bet a little bit here? Or we think like Fogo de Chao maybe? What are we thinking?
What, like every other week?
I mean, I got you kind of nibbling right now, so yeah.
I mean, I'll just say that, Travis, like I would pay for us to go to Fogo just because like I feel like you have provided so much assistance to me over the years. It's been worth it. Like it would be worth it for me to pay
help
that.
me with all these political questions I don't understand. That make no sense to me. So I just call Chris up. I'm like, all right, politics 101. What does this mean? And then he'll go on very detailed explanation. And I'm like,
Travis sets the phone down and picks it up 10 minutes later.
Yeah. Hey, we can go to Fogo tonight.
You're not gonna let me buy you wings. We're going to Ray J's tonight, and I'm buying you wings, and then we'll figure out if we're going double or nothing another time.
All right, perfect.
And if you need to buy like whatever else on the menu too, not just wings. Don't go.
I'll do that. It works for me.
We need a picture that this happened. We need evidence that you. Yeah.
Travis, if you order water, I'm going to be so angry.
No, seafood tower. I already told you, twin lobster tails. We're ready to roll. So come on.
All right. Thank you everyone for sticking with us. We'll report back as soon as we can. But this has been another fun episode of Connect This.